If it screams, increase the signal until it stops. Warden Karen Dax said it like he was adjusting the temperature in a conference room, and every scientist behind the reinforced glass pretended not to hear the cruelty hiding inside the order. The observation deck of Kestrel 9 research station went quiet except for the warning alarms pulsing red across the walls. On the other side of 6 inches of transparent alloy, the thing the galaxy called the Vorakai Maw pressed its massive body into the far corner of the containment chamber, trying to get away from the white lights burning overhead and the sound no human ear could hear, but every bone in Nathan Cole's body seemed to feel. The creature was bigger than a pickup truck, all black armor plates and long folded limbs, with a ridge of silver fuzz running down the back of its neck that somehow made it look younger than it should have. Everyone else stared at the claws. Nathan stared at the way it kept shielding the same place under its throat. "That animal is not evil," he said under his breath. Dr. Maylis turned her glass-dark eyes toward him. "That animal disabled 3 capture teams, destroyed 2 transport cages, and forced a commercial moon to evacuate." Nathan did not look away from the glass. "I did not say it was safe. I said it was hurting." A few of the alien researchers shifted at that, uncomfortable in the way people get when common sense walks into a room full of expensive degrees. Nathan Cole had not been invited to Kestrel 9 because anyone respected his opinion. He was listed on the staffing sheet as an Earth wildlife consultant, which sounded fancy until you heard the way they said it. Back home in Wyoming, that meant he had pulled coyotes out of culverts, moved angry rattlers off porches, calmed horses after lightning storms, and once spent 4 hours in freezing rain earning the trust of a half-starved sheepdog with a trap on its leg. Out here, among beings who measured intelligence by math symbols and architecture, it made him the soft-skinned mammal who knew how to handle troublesome animals. Warden Dax stepped closer to the control rail, his 4 eyes reflecting the red alarm lights. "Increase the containment frequency by 12%. Maylis hesitated. "Warden, the last increase caused severe distress indicators." "Distress is useful. It shows us where the limits are." Nathan slowly set down the metal cup of coffee he had been holding since breakfast. It landed with a small, dull click that somehow carried through the whole room. "You keep calling that research," he said. "Where I come from, we call it making the problem worse." Dax gave him a thin smile. "Where you come from, Mr. Cole, your species names predators and lets them sleep on furniture. Forgive me if I do not trust Earth's judgment." A few aliens laughed softly. Nathan did not. He was watching the creature lower its head, not in rage, not in attack, but in panic. The lights brightened. The hidden frequency climbed. The huge animal shuddered once and backed so hard into the wall that the glass trembled under Nathan's boots. Maylis looked at the monitors. Dax looked pleased. Nathan felt an old, familiar anger settle into his chest, the quiet kind. The kind that did not need shouting to become dangerous. He leaned toward the glass, voice low, almost gentle. "Easy, buddy," he whispered. The creature stopped moving for half a second. Just half a second. But everyone saw it. For 1/2 second, the Vorakai Maw stopped because Nathan Cole had spoken to it like a living thing instead of a problem with teeth. Then the frequency climbed again, and the moment broke. The creature shoved itself deeper into the corner, its armored limbs scraping against the floor as the observation deck filled with the flat beeping of rising stress monitors. Dr. Maylis stared at the screen, her thin fingers frozen above the controls. "That response was not in the previous logs," she said quietly. Warden Karen Dax turned his 4 eyes toward Nathan as if Nathan had cheated at a card table. "Coincidence." Nathan kept his voice even. "Turn the signal down and say that again." Dax gave a short, dry laugh. "You mistake proximity to animals for expertise, Mr. Cole." "No," Nathan said, still watching the creature. "I mistake pain for pain." The room went still in a way that had nothing to do with fear. It was the silence of people who had been taught that compassion was unprofessional. Maylis cleared her throat and brought up Nathan's personnel file on the side display. His picture appeared beside a list that looked unimpressive to everyone in the room. Former United States Marine, Wyoming Fish and Wildlife Volunteer, Civilian Rescue Handler, Emergency Livestock Evacuation Coordinator, Earth Wilderness Relocation Specialist. To the Alien Committee, it sounded like a man who had spent his life chasing barn animals through bad weather. To Nathan, It was 20 years of learning the hard way that frightened things do not care about your badge, your degree, or your weapon. They care about whether you are blocking the only way out. You were not on the original consultation list, Maylis admitted. I requested a military xenobiologist. Earth sent you. Nathan finally looked at her. Earth sent the person who answered the phone. A younger alien technician near the rear blinked at him. That is not reassuring. It usually is not, Nathan said. That almost pulled a nervous smile from someone, but Dax cut it off with a look. He stepped closer to the glass, hands folded behind his back, enjoying the shape of his own authority. This facility does not exist to comfort dangerous organisms. It exists to understand them, contain them, and, when necessary, make them useful. Nathan heard the last word land harder than the rest. Useful. Back home, he had heard men say that about dogs they chained outside all winter, horses they pushed past exhaustion, and people they only noticed when something needed lifting. He turned his wedding ring once around his finger, a habit he had never broken after Laura died. She used to tell him that he had a bad habit of bringing home lost causes. A limping mutt, a half-frozen barn cat, a neighbor kid whose father drank too much and shouted too loud. Nathan had always shrugged and said somebody had to. He looked back through the glass. The maw was not pacing randomly. It kept turning its body away from the light, protecting the same spot below its throat, pulling one limb close every time the emitter pulsed. It has an injury, Nathan said. Maylis glanced up. Our scans show no critical wound. Your scans are looking for critical. I am looking for the thing that made it stop trusting the room. Dax leaned toward him, voice smooth and insulting. And what does Earth Wisdom recommend? A blanket? A bowl of warm milk? Nathan did not take the bait. He pointed at the chamber floor. Dim the lights. Kill the sonic emitter for 60 seconds. Move everybody away from the glass. Then give it a dark corner and something that smells like food instead of disinfectant. Absurd, Dax said. That is not containment. Nathan nodded once. No, that is the first step to not getting someone hurt because you are too proud to admit you scared it. Maylis looked from Nathan to the creature, and for the first time since he had arrived on Kestrel 9, doubt cracked through her perfect professional mask. Before she could answer, the main alarm shifted from red to white. A technician shouted from the lower console. Warden, the inner floor lock is cycling. Dax stiffened. Who authorized that? No one spoke. On the monitor, inside the containment chamber, a maintenance hatch began to open by mistake, and a young technician in a gray pressure suit froze halfway through the doorway, staring up at the terrified giant everyone else kept calling a monster. Nathan was already moving before anyone else understood what that meant. Nathan reached the emergency console before the guards reached their weapons. Do not fire, he said, and there was something in his voice that made even the armed security team hesitate. The young technician in the gray pressure suit stood frozen inside the maintenance hatch, one boot still caught on the threshold, both hands raised like that would mean anything to a creature the size of a delivery truck. The Vorakai maw turned toward him, not fast, not like a hunter, but like an animal startled awake in a strange garage with every light on and every person yelling at once. Warden Dax snapped his head toward the security rail. Deploy suppression units. Nathan slammed his palm down on the manual lockout. A clear shield slid over the weapon's control before Dax could authorize the command. The room gasped. Dax looked at him with all four eyes. You just interfered with station safety protocol. Nathan did not even glance back. Your protocol put him in there. Dr. Maylis moved beside him, her calm finally beginning to fray at the edges. Mr. Cole, if the creature reaches him, we may not be able to extract him safely. Then stop making it worse. Nathan pointed at the upper lights. Dim those now. Cut the sonic emitter. Open a low side channel to the chamber speakers, not the alarm system, the speakers. Maylis hesitated for 1 second too long. The maw lowered its head and let out a deep trembling sound that made the glass hum. The technician whimpered through the open channel. Please, please, I do not know what to do. Nathan leaned toward the microphone. Hey, listen to me. What is your name? The technician blinked, confused by the question. Relin. All right, Relin. I am Nathan. You are going to move slow. Not backward. Sideways. Keep your shoulders turned a little. Do not stare at its eyes. Do not run. Dax barked from behind him. This is sentimental madness. Nathan looked over his shoulder for the first time, and his face had gone cold in a way that made the insult die in the air. No, Warden. Madness is poking a scared animal for 3 days and acting surprised when it starts hating the room. Melis quietly touched the control pad. The overhead lights softened from hard white to a low amber. The hidden frequency fell away. The change was immediate. The maw stopped shaking so hard. It still watched Relin, still breathed heavy, still looked big enough to make every alien in the room rethink their life choices. But the panic in its body loosened by an inch. Nathan saw it. Melis saw it too. It is responding, she whispered. Of course it is, Nathan said. It has been responding the whole time. You just did not like what it was saying. Relin took one slow step sideways. The maw shifted with him. Nathan caught the movement at the throat again, that protective curl of one limb. There, he said softly. Zoom under the left neck ridge. Melis enlarged the image. Beneath the dark plates, half hidden by that thin silver fuzz, was a small piece of embedded metal pulsing faintly with the same rhythm as the containment system. The room went very still. Melis drew in a careful breath. That is not part of its biology. No, Nathan said. That is why it keeps covering the spot. Dax's expression tightened, but only for a moment. A tracking barb from the capture crew. Irrelevant. Nathan stared at him. You knew? Dax did not answer. He did not have to. Nathan turned back to the glass, and the anger in him settled deeper, quieter, heavier. Relin reached the hatch and stumbled out as the door sealed behind him. The room should have relaxed. It did not. Because the maw had stopped looking at Relin. It was looking at Nathan through the glass, as if it had finally figured out which voice in the room was not lying. Nathan did not like the way the creature was looking at him. Not because it felt dangerous, though it was. Not because those green eyes were calm, because they were not. He did not like it because he had seen that exact look before in animals that had finally found one person in the room who noticed the real problem. It was not trust yet. Trust was too expensive to hand out that fast. It was a question. Dr. Melis lowered the screen brightness with one slow motion, as if loud movements might upset the whole station. The tracking barb is still broadcasting, she said. It is tied into the containment frequency. Nathan nodded. So every time you turn up the system, you are not just holding it in place. You are hurting the same wound. Melis looked sick in a quiet, alien way, her glass-dark eyes narrowing until they reflected only the pulsing metal under the creature's neck. Warden Dax recovered faster than everyone else, because shame could not land on a man who had already decided he was right. The barb was approved by Capture Command. Without it, the animal could not be located after sedation. Nathan turned on him. You tagged a scared juvenile like luggage and then acted shocked when it panicked. The word juvenile hit the room harder than any alarm. Melis looked back at the biological readouts. We have not confirmed age classification. Then confirm it, Nathan said. Look at the joints. Look at the neck fuzz. Look at the way it keeps searching the ceiling when the emitter pulses. It is calling for something. Dax's mouth tightened. Enough. We are losing control of this consultation. No, Nathan said. You are losing control of the story you wanted to sell. That finally reached the investors watching from the sealed balcony above. Their soft murmurs came through the overhead audio, polished voices suddenly less confident. Dax heard them too, and Nathan saw the calculation move across his face. A man like Dax would rather risk a disaster than look embarrassed in front of people with money. Prepare the behavioral stress demonstration, Dax ordered. Melis stiffened. Warden, after what we just learned, that would be reckless. It will be controlled. Nothing about this has been controlled, Nathan said. Dax ignored him and pressed his palm to the command seal. The containment floor shifted beneath the maw, sliding panels opening to raise a hard light restraint ring from below. The creature recoiled into the corner, not attacking, just trying to make itself smaller than its own fear. Nathan stepped toward the access stairs. 2 guards moved to block him. He did not shove them. He did not raise his voice. He simply looked at Melis. You know this is wrong. For a second, she said nothing. That was the worst part. Nathan could see the fight in her face, the scientist against the employee, the truth against the chain of command. Then Dax gave the order. The white lights flared back to full strength. The frequency started climbing. The maw let out a low, broken sound and slammed one limb over the pulsing barb under its throat. The younger technician, Relin, still shaken from his escape, whispered, It is not trying to get out. It is trying to make the pain stop. Nathan heard that and felt something in him settle into place. He thought of Laura, of the dog she used to sneak scraps to behind the county shelter, of their daughter asking why grown-ups always waited so long before doing the right thing. He reached over, took the manual access badge from Rellen's trembling hand, and swiped it before anyone understood what he was doing. The inner door released with a heavy breath of air. Maylee spun toward him. "Nathan, you cannot go in there." Nathan picked up a coil of safety line, a ration pack from the emergency shelf, and a small field cutter meant for maintenance work. His heart was pounding hard enough that he could feel it in his teeth, but his hands stayed steady. He looked through the opening at the giant animal shaking under the lights. "I am not going in there because I am brave," he said. "I am going in because nobody else will stop pushing the button." Then Nathan Cole stepped into the containment chamber, and for the first time since the Maw had arrived on Kestrel 9, every alien in the room stopped talking. Nathan stepped past the inner door and felt the chamber swallow every sound behind him. The air inside was warmer than the observation deck, thick with the sharp smell of disinfectant, hot metal, and animal fear. The floor vibrated under his boots with each pulse from the containment system, and even though the frequency was supposed to be outside human hearing, it crawled along his nerves like a bad memory. Behind the glass, Warden Dax was shouting something, but Nathan let the words blur into noise. He had heard men shout before when they were losing control. It never helped the scared thing in the room. The Vorakai Maw crouched 40 feet away, half hidden under the glare of the overhead lights, one massive limb still clamped over the pulsing barb beneath its throat. Its green eyes locked onto Nathan. The creature did not rush him. That mattered. A predator charging for the kill moved differently. This was a cornered animal measuring whether the new problem was worse than the old pain. Nathan lowered the coil of safety line to the floor. Slow. Easy. No sudden hero nonsense. His heart hammered so hard, he could feel his wedding ring tap against the field cutter in his palm. He thought about his daughter, Grace, back in Colorado, probably eating cereal at her grandmother's kitchen table, not knowing her father was standing in a research cage with something the galaxy had put in the same category as natural disasters. He breathed out through his nose. "Yeah," he murmured, more to himself than to the animal. "This is a real dumb Tuesday. Dr. Meleesfor's voice crackled through the low-side speaker. "Nathan, your pulse is elevated. That tends to happen when you walk into a room with a nervous freight train." A soft, disbelieving sound moved through the observation deck, almost a laugh, almost fear. Nathan tore open the ration pack and set a chunk of protein on the floor, then slid it sideways, away from himself, not toward the creature's face. "There you go," he said. "No tricks. Just food." The Maw's nostrils flared. Its body stayed tight, but its eyes flicked to the ration. Nathan did not smile. People smiled at the wrong times around animals, and then wondered why teeth came out. He turned his shoulders slightly, making himself smaller, less direct. "Easy, buddy. Nobody is asking you to like me." Behind the glass, Dax's voice cut through the speaker before Melees could stop him. "Mr. Cole, step away from the specimen immediately." The Maw flinched at the sharp tone. Nathan raised one hand toward the glass without looking back. "Stop talking." Dax went silent, not because he obeyed, but because the creature had stopped moving again. The Maw lowered its head by a few inches. The ration sat between them. Nathan took one slow step to the side, giving the animal a clear line to the food and a clear line away from him. That was the thing nobody in the station seemed to understand. Trust did not start with touch. It started with room to choose. The Maw stretched one limb forward, hooked the ration gently with a claw longer than Nathan's hand, and dragged it back. It sniffed. It ate. The entire observation deck held its breath. Nathan nodded once. "That is right," Melees whispered over the speaker. "It has refused all prepared feed since arrival." Nathan kept his eyes soft, focused on the shoulder instead of the face. Maybe because nobody offered it dinner without a spotlight and a torture whistle. The creature shifted, and Nathan finally saw the barb clearly. It was buried under irritated plates near the soft ridge of silver fuzz, blinking in time with the system overhead. Every pulse made the Maw's skin tighten around it. Nathan felt his anger sharpen, but he buried it deep. Anger was for later. Right now, calm was a tool. He lifted the field cutter slowly and placed it on the floor where the Maw could see it. "I need to get that thing out of your neck," he said quietly. You are not going to understand the words, but maybe you understand the tone. The maw rumbled low, not a threat exactly, more like thunder far away. Nathan sat down on the floor, careful and slow, making himself look less like a hunter and more like a tired man with bad knees. Yeah, he said. I would not trust me either. Then, inch by inch, the creature moved closer. Nathan stayed seated as the Voracai maw came closer, because standing would have been a challenge and reaching would have been a mistake. The creature moved one careful inch at a time, huge claws clicking softly against the floor, green eyes fixed on the field cutter lying beside Nathan's boot. Behind the glass, nobody breathed loud enough to be heard. Even Warden Dax had gone quiet, which told Nathan the man was either scared or planning something, and neither option made him feel better. The maw stopped close enough that Nathan could feel the warmth of its breath push against his jacket. It smelled like burned dust and protein ration. Nathan kept his hands open on his knees. That is it, he said softly. No rush. I am not going anywhere. Dr. Melisfor whispered through the speaker. Nathan, it is within 8 feet of you. I can see that. Your pulse is still rising. Well, I am not made of furniture, Doctor. A small nervous sound came from the observation deck, but Nathan did not look away. The maw lowered its head, not all the way, just enough to show the ridge of silver fuzz near its neck. Up close, the creature looked less like a nightmare and more like something exhausted from being misunderstood. Its armor plates were scratched from the transport cage. Its breathing was uneven. Every pulse from the tracking barb made one side of its neck twitch. Nathan felt the old anger again, but he kept his voice gentle. Somebody really did a number on you, huh? The maw rumbled. Nathan slowly picked up the field cutter with 2 fingers, holding it low, letting the animal see every movement. I know. Tools are bad news when the wrong people hold them. Warden Dax finally broke in. This has gone far enough. Mr. Cole, you are not authorized to perform medical intervention on council property. Nathan did not turn around. Then write me up. That creature is not your concern. Nathan's face went still. Anything hurting in the same room as me is my concern. The silence after that felt different. It was not fear this time. It was the sound of several alien scientists realizing they had no protocol for a human who meant exactly what he said. Nathan lifted his free hand, palm down, slow as sunrise. The maw tensed, then held still. He did not touch the wound. Not yet. He rested his hand lightly against the air near the silver fuzz, close enough for the creature to feel the choice. I am going to call you Fluffy, Nathan murmured. Because if I keep calling you catastrophic predator, I am going to start sounding like the idiots upstairs. For one strange second, the whole station seemed to forget it was in crisis. Someone behind the glass gave a startled laugh. Then another. Dax snapped. This is not amusing. But the laughter died on its own, because the maw did not pull away. It leaned closer. Just a little. Nathan swallowed hard. All right, Fluffy. That is either permission or the worst misunderstanding of my life. He brought the cutter toward the barb. Melis spoke quickly, her voice tight. If you sever the outer casing first, the transmitter may discharge. Then tell me where to cut. There was a pause. Then Melis stepped fully to the console, ignoring Dax's glare. 2 inches below the pulsing seam. There is a release notch under the 3rd ridge. Nathan gave the smallest nod. Thank you. Dax's voice turned sharp. Dr. Vor, you will stand down. Melis did not. No, Warden. I should have stood up earlier. Nathan placed the cutter against the metal barb. Fluffy shook once, a deep tremor that passed through the floor into Nathan's spine. He kept his voice low. Stay with me, big guy. Almost there. The cutter hummed. The barb's light flickered. Then, from the ceiling above them, 3 security drones unfolded from hidden panels, their lenses glowing cold blue. Fluffy saw them before Nathan did, and the soft rumble in its chest changed into something lower, protective, and terribly awake. The drones unfolded with a soft mechanical click, and every calm thing Nathan had built inside that chamber almost broke at once. Fluffy lifted its head, the silver ridge along its neck rising as the blue lenses fixed on the wound under its throat. Nathan saw the change happen in the creature's body before the room understood it. The fear was still there, but now it had somewhere to go. It moved in front of him, not toward the drones, not away from the pain. In front of him, Nathan held the cutter perfectly still against the barb and said, Easy. I see them. Behind the glass, Warden Dax stood at the command rail with his hand pressed flat to the authorization seal. Security response is active. Step away from the specimen. Nathan did not look at him. You mean step away from the animal you are about to hurt again. It is protecting you because you are near its injury. Do not mistake reflex for loyalty. Nathan almost laughed at that, but there was no humor in him. People like Dax always had a clean word for every ugly thing. Reflex, protocol, property, specimen. He looked at Fluffy's massive shoulder blocking half his view of the drones and thought of Grace at 6 years old, standing in their kitchen with a muddy stray tucked under her arms, saying, "Dad, he is shaking because he thinks we are mad at him." Laura had been alive then, leaning against the counter, smiling like Nathan had already lost the argument. He had. He always did when something scared needed help. Melis's voice cut through the speaker, tight and controlled. "Warden, disengage the drones. The creature is showing defensive bonding behavior." Dax snapped back. "It is showing possession." Nathan finally turned his head just enough for the observation deck to see his face. "No, it is showing better judgment than you." The room went silent. Dax's jaw tightened. Fire restraint lines. The drones shifted, and Fluffy gave a low warning sound that rolled through Nathan's chest. Nathan dropped the cutter, grabbed the safety line, and looped it around his own forearm, then around one of Fluffy's front armor ridges. Not a leash. An anchor. If the creature lunged, he would feel it. If he moved, it would feel him. He leaned close to that huge trembling shoulder and spoke like he was talking to a nervous horse in a thunderstorm. "Stay with me. Do not chase the noise. Stay with me." Melis stared at the biological readout. "Its heart rate is matching his," she whispered. Relin, still pale in his pressure suit, stepped toward her console. "Doctor, the sonic emitter is feeding the drone targeting system." Melis looked at him. "Can you separate them?" "Not from here." "Then where?" Relin pointed through the glass toward a maintenance panel inside the chamber, 20 feet behind Nathan. "Manual junction." Nathan heard enough. He glanced at the panel, then at Fluffy. "Of course it is over there." Dax's voice sharpened. "Nobody will assist him." Melis reached across the console and locked out the observation room microphone, cutting Dax off mid-order. Then her voice came through Nathan's private channel. "Nathan, if you can reach that panel, I can kill the emitter. But you will need the creature to move with you, slowly." Nathan looked at the giant animal beside him. The monster half the galaxy wanted dead and the other half wanted owned. Its green eyes were still on the drones. He tightened the safety line gently, just enough to get its attention. "Fluffy," he said, testing the name like a promise. The creature's head lowered by an inch. Nathan took one careful step toward the panel. The line went taut. For one awful second, nothing happened. Then Fluffy stepped with him. Nathan took another step, and Fluffy moved with him, slow enough to shake the whole chamber, but careful enough not to pull the safety line tight. That was the part that made the observation deck go quiet. Not the size of the creature. Not the drones circling above with cold blue lenses. The carefulness. The choice. Every alien watching had spent days calling the Vorikai Maw a mindless catastrophe, and now it was matching the pace of a tired man from Wyoming like a scared horse crossing a bad bridge. "That is it," Nathan said, keeping his voice low. "One foot at a time. You are doing fine." The drones shifted left. Fluffy's head snapped toward them, and Nathan felt the safety line tug against his forearm. He stopped immediately. "No. Stay with me." The creature trembled, caught between instinct and trust. Nathan knew that feeling better than he wanted to. He had lived there after Laura died. One half of him wanting to run from every room that still held her coffee mug, the other half knowing Grace needed him to stay. Fear did not always make you flee. Sometimes it made you lash out. Sometimes it made you freeze. Sometimes, if someone gave you one steady voice, it gave you just enough room to choose. Fluffy looked down at him. Nathan nodded once. "Good. Keep choosing." Behind the glass, Melis worked with Relin at the console. "Nathan, the panel is secured with a rotating pressure lock. You will need to open the yellow casing first." "I see it." "The junction will spark when the backup frequency drops." "How much spark are we talking?" Relin answered, nervous but trying hard. "Enough to ruin your day? Not enough to end it." Nathan almost smiled. "Kid, where I come from, that counts as good news." He reached the wall panel and set the field cutter against the casing. Above him, the drones lowered another foot. Dax's voice suddenly broke back through an emergency channel. This facility will not be overruled by a sentimental mammal and a frightened animal. Nathan froze for only a beat. Then he said, calm and flat, there it is. You finally said the honest part. Dax continued, louder now, performing for the investors again. The creature is council property. Its defensive response has military value. If Earth cannot understand that, Earth should not be allowed near high-risk assets. Fluffy rumbled at the sound of his voice. Nathan kept cutting. You hear that, big guy? He thinks pain is a business model. Melee snapped. Warden, you are being recorded. Dax said nothing. That silence told Nathan the investors had heard enough. The panel casing fell open. Inside, 3 pulsing conduits fed into the sonic grid, the tracking barb, and the drone targeting system. Nathan stared at the mess of alien engineering. Doctor, I am looking at 3 lines and none of them are labeled in English. The center conduit. Twist, do not pull. Nathan gripped it and twisted. The chamber lights flickered. The hidden frequency dropped out, so suddenly the air seemed to exhale. Fluffy sagged against the floor, not collapsing, just relieved in a way Nathan felt in his own knees. For the first time, the creature made a sound that was not a warning. It was low, uncertain, almost small. Melis whispered. That vocalization matches juvenile distress calls from the original field recordings. The words moved through the observation deck like a door opening in every mind at once. Juvenile. Not monster. Not weapon. A young thing taken from somewhere dark and familiar, dragged into lights it hated, hurt every time it cried out, and punished for being afraid. Nathan turned back to Fluffy and slowly lifted the cutter. All right, he said. Let us finish this. This time, when he touched the barb, Fluffy did not pull away. Nathan found the release notch Melis had described and pressed. The metal spike loosened with a soft click and fell into his hand, blinking once before going dark. Fluffy stared at it, then at Nathan. The drones above lost their targeting lock and drifted uselessly in place. Nobody cheered. Nobody moved. The giant creature lowered its head until its silver-fuzzed neck rested inches from Nathan's shoulder, and Nathan, shaking harder now that the worst had passed, let out one long breath. Yeah, he murmured. I know. People can be stupid. Behind the glass, Melis looked at the dead barb in Nathan's hand, then at Dax, and her voice turned colder than he had ever heard it. Warden, where is the mother? For several seconds, nobody answered Melis. The question hung over the observation deck heavier than the alarms, heavier than the dead tracking barb in Nathan's hand, heavier than the giant creature resting its head beside him like it had finally run out of reasons to fight the room. Warden Dax looked toward the sealed balcony where the investors stood silent behind their polished glass. The adult specimen is not relevant to this facility, he said. Melis turned slowly. That was not my question. Nathan felt Fluffy shift at the sound of her voice. He rested one hand against the silver fuzz near its neck, not petting exactly, just letting the animal know he was still there. Relin pulled up the capture logs with shaking fingers. The files opened one by one, and the truth came out in cold little pieces. The Vorikai young had been taken from a nesting world under quarantine. The mother had followed the transport ship for almost 2 days before the hunters used decoy signals to draw her away. She was alive, somewhere beyond the outer moon belt, still answering the distress call that Kestrel 9 had been using as a control frequency. Melis closed her eyes. We turned its mother's voice into a cage. That was the moment the room changed. Not because the creature had become less dangerous. Not because Nathan had made everyone comfortable. It changed because no one could pretend anymore. Dax stepped back from the command rail, already building his defense in his head. All procedures were approved. Nathan looked through the glass at him, tired, dirty, one sleeve torn, his hands still steady. A lot of wrong things come with signatures. No one laughed. Melis opened the station-wide channel. Her voice was quiet, but it carried into every corridor. By authority of the Galactic Conservation Accord, I am suspending all weapons research connected to this organism. Warden Karen Dax is relieved of command pending tribunal review. Prepare a transport vessel for rehabilitation transfer. Dax stared at her. You cannot give that creature to Earth. Nathan stood slowly, and Fluffy stood with him. The safety line between them hung loose now. That mattered. It was not restrained anymore. It was a reminder of the first step they had taken together. She is not giving him to Earth, Nathan said. She is getting him out of your hands. Later, when the transport bay opened to the stars, Fluffy refused every containment crate on the station. It would not enter anything with hard white lights or smooth metal walls. So Nathan walked ahead into an old cargo shuttle, dimmed the lamps, threw 3 thermal blankets in the corner, and placed a tray of protein ration beside the door. Your call, he said. I am not dragging you. The whole station watched as the young Vorikai lowered its head and followed him inside. Melis stood at the ramp, holding the coordinates of the nesting world and the open channel carrying the mother's distant call. He may leave you when he hears her, she said. Nathan nodded. I hope he does. She studied him like that answer confused her more than anything else he had done. You saved him, and you do not want to keep him? Nathan thought of Grace, of every animal he had ever helped, of every lonely thing people mistook for broken because they could not own it. Saving something is not the same as owning it, Doctor. The shuttle lifted from Kestrel 9 with no cheering crowd, no victory speech, no grand human threat. Just a tired man sitting on the floor beside a frightened creature the galaxy had labeled wrong, while a mother's call grew stronger through the speakers. Fluffy rested its massive head near Nathan's boot, and Nathan looked out at the stars with a small, sad smile. People always wanted monsters to be simple. It made the universe easier to understand. But most of the time, the thing roaring in the dark was not asking to be feared. It was asking someone to finally listen.